All right, let's go ahead and read this poem. Oh, there, nice. All right, let's read this poem. Can I steal it from you for a second? Yep. Strange fruit. Southern trees bear strange fruit. Blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolias sweet and fresh, then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the trees to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crop. All right, first impressions.
I had to read it twice for me to understand that it was about slavery or lynching. Because I read it and I was like, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. And I was like, am I overthinking this? But as you go through all of the images and like the juxtaposition of the scent of magnolias and then the sudden smell of burning flesh make you understand that it is about lynching.
Yeah, it almost made my stomach hurt when it flip-flopped back and forth between, in the second stanza, when it kept going back and forth between these wonderful images of the gallant South, and then right away flip to the twisted mouth and flip back to the scent of magnolias, and then to burning flesh. That juxtaposition I thought was really impactful.
Mm-hmm.
So what does juxtaposition mean? What do you mean by juxtaposition?
I was gonna say they placed like two like completely like seemingly opposite things next to each other, kind of to highlight the similarities and differences between them.
Right.
And in this case, I saw what Rose was saying, that the pastoral scene and the bulging eyes and twisted mouth and the scent of magnolias and the smell of burning flesh, they were put next to each other because in the South they were next to each other and they all tie back to the time of slavery and lynchings.
Right.
And it's also those opposite worlds of white people living in the South and black people living in the South. So white people who live in the South see those pastoral scenes or beautiful scenes and the sweet magnolias and all these beautiful pieces of nature in these images that we see in this poem. And then in the opposite lines, in the second stanza, we see the true self, the deep self, the root of the self.
So good. All right, let's go to stanza one. Everybody look at stanza one. What do you see going on there? What's significant? What choices is the author making?
I really but I noticed the blood on the leaves and blood at the root.
Mm-hmm.
Just this image of like blood seeping into the trees and seeping into the ground, and that it creates this fruit. And I kind of saw it as these trees in our country have flourished from the blood that we have spilled from slavery and from lynching. And we are like the product of this, and we need to continue to recognize.
Because somebody connect the history of the South or the history of the economics of America on slaves. Somebody connect what you were just saying there.
We were one of the last developed countries to abolish slavery. And our main export, our main thing that we grew, other than tobacco, was cotton. And in the South, it was basically all cotton. Up north, there was, trading, logging, all that kind of stuff. But in the South, the main thing that they did was cotton, and that's what they profited from.
Julia.
So the South wanted slavery so that they could keep building themselves up, because unlike the North that had the exports and the ability to not have cotton and have these cities, the South was basically all plantations. There were no cities. So that's why they wanted to keep slavery.
So instead
keep
of
growing.
watering the trees, we've got blood
Exactly.
watering the trees and the root. Okay, what is that called where you see an image in a poem? See, hear, smell, taste, touch it.
Sensory language and imagery.
Sensory
Yeah.
language, right? It's imagery.
And
So-
that, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I was just gonna say that the poplar tree is like a cottonwood tree.
What?
I guess.
Nice
So-
looking it up.
Yeah,
Thank you,
because
Google.
I thought it had something to do with cotton. So, so I mean, I guess that's a little bit more.
Yes, way to
Yeah.
connect the dots, the details of
Definitely.
that with the history.
But yeah, sorry.
Nice.
great.
No sorries. That was awesome.
Yeah, and I think that oh, that's so good. The cotton trees, and it goes back to what Abby was saying about how there are two different Souths, but when you get to the root of it, I think you even use that word, the root. So
Mhm.
not only is blood on the leaves, but blood is at the root. We're growing from this violence and from this blood. So then, it almost makes sense why we are where we are today when our tree was grown from blood, watered with blood.
All right,
yeah.
so let's go to the title, Strange Fruit,
Right.
which connects. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the title and the time period, where it's from 1937.
Yeah, that's good.
It's specifically post-slavery. It's a retrospect on slavery, but at the time lynchings were still happening. Especially in the South. There were still lynchings happening, and I think that the blood can be seen as the racism in the past, and the strange fruit is the bearing of lynchings in the
Yeah.
present.
Yep.
That's so good.
Excellent.
Like the history is born the fruit, which is today.
Yeah.
Which still hangs and smells and rots and makes our orchard of America a disgusting. It's a horrible, horrible part of American history that we ought to look at and face.
And we say that fruit
see.
hangs,
Yeah,
and
right.
so even just that language makes it, and that's why like it's hurting my stomach almost, because you think of fruit and it's something
Right.
sweet.
Oh, good.
And how sweet that is, like
Right.
it's almost cloying. It becomes
Right.
sickly.
Yeah.
When you think about the comparison between a sweet fruit and a black body hanging from a tree.
So good. Such a good, unexpected. It's ironic, right?
Right.
It's the irony of thinking of sweet fruit and then thinking of a body as that fruit, which is born out of American history, the tree that's been fed by the blood of Black men. All right, let's go to stanza 2. What else do you see there?
I think the second line, when I first read it, like I didn't see the pattern as we were reading it the first time, that those lines were kind of flipping back and forth from the beautiful South and then back and forth to like
Right.
the image of the black body.
So it goes line 1 or line 5, technically, if we're counting them out.
With the kind of
Right.
A, B, B, C, C, D, D.
Wow, right.
Rhyme scheme of couplets.
Rhyme screaming couplet, south and mouth and fresh and flesh.
Yeah.
The first is the southern white and then the southern black versus the southern white and the southern black. That's
But I also think it's interesting in that second line, like at first I thought that was a personification of the South, not just of a black body, but of like the opposite side of the South.
Yeah,
too.
right. Right.
I saw Emmett Till in that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Right.
God.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
For sure.
the imagery and specifically the second stanza is definitely a reference to the context in which the poem was written, where I believe it was in response to the famous photo of it's the one we've all seen where there's two black boys being hung and then there's white people all around them, one's pointing at the bodies.
yeah.
But it was in response to that specific case where there's two black boys who were wrongfully accused, put in jail to receive trial, and then removed from jail by a lynch mob and then lynched. And then that photo was what spurred the author to write this poem. And that's like, to me, that's the imagery that I see in this second stanza, because he's specifically referencing that same image that circulated all of America, even like at 1937, which we might think is pretty recent, but it's not, because that's when that happened.
Fantastic. Let's go to last stanza, last 4 lines.
I thought that the last stanza called most to me because it really emphasizes where the problem is and like what is the cause or like the unexpected effect, where I think that a fruit is something that you purposefully grow and it's like something that was built in the past, and we see it now coming in this strange fruit in the southern trees, and now we have the fruit on the trees, And it's for the crows to pluck, the rain to gather, wind to suck, sun to rot, and trees to drop.
Yeah.
It's just highlighting the abuses that Black people felt in the time by everyone after you've been after your community's been lynched. There's nothing more that you can do. You're just at the bottom.
After we have taken you for your economics, after we have subjugated you, after we have used you to create our economy, we've sucked you dry, we've hurt you, right? It's that, I love that what you just said about the description of everybody in the society is sucking and pulling and drinking from this fruit and gaining benefit, right? These are all beneficial things. The rain gets stronger, the wind is the sun, the trees, those are all the positives, again, juxtaposed with all the negatives that they're doing to the fruit.
Right. And I wonder, I don't know if I'm just like reading much into this, but I think it's interesting that the author chooses actions to pluck and to gather, because that makes me think of cotton, makes me think of Black people gathering cotton.
Good. The word choice there.
Right.
Good.
So instead of the Black people plucking, and that's so interesting. Like the author chooses those specific words, words so carefully, because it makes me think of Black people having been forced to pluck cotton and gather cotton until eventually they drop. So I just think that's so interesting. Kind of like the strange and bitter crop used to be cotton, and now is the people that were lynching.
The people themselves. The
Right.
people have been abused and taken. All right, last line. Here is a strange and bitter crop. What's the word choice?
I think the part about bitter, if you're thinking of this from the white South point of view, and even from our point of view, I guess, since we're all white, looking back, it's like we realize now that this is the way that our country was built was horrifying. It was awful. It was from bloodshed and from the abuse of other people. But back then it was, this is how we're building our country. Like we're just doing what we believe is right and all that kind of stuff. And I think for a lot of people, they didn't realize that this is awful what they were doing. So there's this bitterness of looking back on your past and being like, oh my God, that was horrible. And trying to be like, well, we need to move away from that, but also this is still how it is now. So just like that inner conflict.
Because he doesn't say there is a strange and bitter crop. He says here.
Wow, good.
It's in the present.
In the
tense.
present.
Yeah.
Here is.
So good.
It's not
So
here
good.
was, here.
Yeah.
There, over there, but
was,
it's here.
here.
It's not over there, yonder.
It's a problem that's currently
present
here in this
and-
country
right.
at the time.
Because
Good.
way too many people today are like, oh, it was a problem of the past.
Right.
It wasn't me. I'm not racist. It was a
Right.
problem of the past. But
Right.
it's like we're all part of the problem. And if we don't actively work to educate ourselves and fix it, then we further that oppression.
I
And so
also
that's
think
why it's here.
it's
Oh, love
interesting that this author was in New York, in the
Yeah.
north,
And white.
and white.
Yeah.
And that, I'm sure it was the same situation that we have now, where people were just like, slavery's over,
Right.
it's done. There's no
Right.
more racism.
Right.
Especially in the north, because slaves weren't here as much as they were in
Right.
the south.
Oh, we fought that. We died for that. Right.
Yeah. So, but that doesn't excuse you from taking accountability for your racism. And I think white
Or that
people,
the systems that
Yeah.
long propagate.
and our own biases and our prejudices and all these things that we still see today, and that I'm sure we're seeing then in the north and in the south. And people try to excuse themselves from that because they don't support slavery, or they don't
Right.
support these extreme concrete forms of outright racism.
Right.
But that doesn't excuse you from microaggressions and these small forms of racism that we see perpetuated through our country.
So good. All right. Out of 10, what do you give this poem?
A 9.8.
Yeah, this
9.8356.
Yeah.
This one is high for me because I love how much it does with so little space.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.